Jay Campbell, welcome to the podcast all the way from Florida.
That's right, baby. Tampa, Florida, where it's sunny and hot and muggy. And I'm heading to Mexico tomorrow. Unfortunately, there's an ecological disaster in Mexico right now because the Sargasso, where I'm heading in Mexico, in the Yucatan, is flooding the coastline. So it's literally a disaster for me and my wife and my two daughters. We're having to figure out like where we're going to go. But it's an honor to be here today, brother. I'm grateful and definitely humbled and privileged to be here with you.
You've had a shocker on trips lately because just tell our listeners what we were talking about a second ago.
Yeah, dude, very crazily. It was actually my first time in New Zealand and first time in Australia. Well, that's not true. I flew into Sydney in my 20s, but it was like layover. But first time on the ground, walking around, and I was supposed to speak at a big biohacking conference. In fact, the biggest biohacking conference supposedly ever that we put on in Australia, and it was put on by a person from the States. And the cyclone, the once every 70-year cyclone came. It was actually the weekend before, but because the hotels put the gun to your head and they asked to cancel, so they had to end up canceling. So I missed that, and where I was staying in the Gold Coast got flooded out from the cyclone. So obviously it wasn't the best of circumstances. And now, I'm planning a vacation to Mexico, and they're being hit by horrific Sargasso that's like flooding the coastlines, and it smells nasty because rotting seaweed is not pleasant.
So tell me, what'd you say, a Sargasso? I've never heard of that.
So Sargasso is basically a Latin name for seaweed. And it comes from the Sargasso Sea, but it's basically like overgrown algae, and then it sits and festers and becomes, really rotten. And obviously once it washes up on the shoreline, it's very heavy. It's very difficult to deal with and disperse and obviously, throw away. So it's like Mexico is like using the Mexican Navy. They're mobilizing the Mexican Navy to work on it because it's a disaster. I mean, because obviously Mexico's entire country is based on tourism. Yeah. And when all their beaches are full of brown rotting seaweed, nobody's heading to. I mean, we were staying at the Grand Hyatt. I mean, I have a 10-day stay there. It's one of my favorite places in the world. It's one of the most beautiful beaches in the world, and it literally is not habitable. It smells so bad that you can't even walk down to the beach without like getting overrun with a stench of like sulfur or rotten eggs. It's nasty.
Oh, that is a shocker.
Yeah. Crazy stuff.
Anyway, let's get on with the podcast and talk about things that are a little bit lighter than that. So you are you're a men's physique champion. You're a 5-time best-selling author, and you're co-founder of Longevity Labs. So just take our listeners through a little bit of highlights of your career and why you founded Longevity Labs.
Yeah, I mean, so basically I'm 54 years old. I'm a dad, husband, obviously e-commerce entrepreneur, influencer, if that's what you want to call me. I like to tell people that I'm an online gypsy and my accountant's worst nightmare. I tell people this. Most people don't understand this, so I tell them the truth. I've been using peptides since 2004 for 21 years, right? I mean, most people didn't even know what peptides were until like the late, 2018, 2017 in the clinical community. But I've been using them since 2004. And at the same time that I was quote unquote biohacking or self-experimenting on myself with therapeutic testosterone with various delivery systems, I also started using peptides. And, it was during all of this formative time of me studying. And remember, this is in the infancy of the internet. So you had to really search to find stuff. There were a couple of books on therapeutic hormones. Nelson Virgil, who was a very great mentor of mine when I first published my first book in 2015, his book was called Testosterone, A Man's Guide. And then there was another one called Built to Survive by him and Michael Mooney. And Michael Mooney was a physician that worked on men that were diagnosed with HIV. And at that time in the mid 2000s, an HIV diagnosis was a death sentence. So most of the guys that were like experimenting with hormones and using growth hormone and different things were doing it to stay alive, because at that point in time, it was a death sentence. So very, very interesting time. And technically, like I said, 13 years later, people would see me, and I was not an entrepreneur. I was doing none of the things I'm doing now, but I was working in the digital marketing, in the automotive industry and digital marketing. People that would see me they marveled at my physique because I had an amazing physique, and they would always ask me, they're like, "Wow, how do you look like you do?" And I said, "I use therapeutic testosterone." And now that would either be met with like, "Oh my God, you're on steroids," or smarter, sophisticated people would be like, "Wow, fascinating. Tell me more."
can I just jump in,
Yeah.
Jay, just on this, just to clarify
Yep.
the legal status of therapeutic testosterone and peptides in the States, and the reason, because a lot of listeners here, when they hear the word peptides, I tell you what pops into their mind was about nearly 10 years ago, there was a big scandal with one of the football teams, Australian League football teams over here, called Essendon, and it turns out they were all being injected with stuff that they didn't know what it was.
Right.
And after a 3-year investigation, they found out that it was a peptide. That was a performance-enhancing peptide that wasn't legal at the time.
All peptides are performance enhancers, by the way.
Yes, right, yeah. But anyway, these 34 players got banned. There was all sorts of drama over
Australia, bro.
Yes, I know.
It's so backward, bro. What in the hell? And just to carry on the story, I eventually wrote a book because the smart people encouraged me to write a book. And when I did it, I was working with my current wife, Monica, in real estate. And I basically left the digital automotive marketing world and was helping her because she was a successful residential real estate saleswoman in Southern California. And her and I started dating on Match.com after I came out of my divorce. She was coming out of divorce. This is in 2012. And we started doing really, really well together. And so the people that, convinced me to write a book on testosterone, initially, I was fearful because I'm not a licensed medical professional. I don't have any kind of formal, education. I do have a minor in molecular biology in college because I was a nerd and stuff. So I understood this stuff from a chemical perspective better than most, probably better than almost everyone. But I didn't have a formal medical training or license. So to write a book on therapeutic hormones in 2014, when I started looking into this, there was a little bit of trepidation on my part, and it was obviously the basis of the first book that I wrote that became the number one selling book of all time on therapeutic testosterone. I've spoken at obviously conferences around the world, and I've just now, with whatever has happened in the last 4 years since COVID, become a social media influencer. I have a very powerful website. My website, jcampbell.com, is like a top 3, somewhere between top 3 and top 4, depending on who you believe, for peptide and hormone related information. We have over 100 articles that are ranked top 5 on Google. So, there's a lot of people that come to my website to get information about peptides. But, my claim to fame really was obviously in therapeutic hormones. And then in the last, 4 or 5 years, I've written, or I should say last 6 or 7 years, I've written books on fasting. And then I wrote the book on peptides in 2023 that also exploded into the world. And very, very, very truthfully, Paul, the reason that book exploded was it was right after the vaccine debacle. And people were looking for alternative forms of healing. And the book went out on Amazon in February of 23 and exploded. I mean, it exploded into mainstream consciousness. And then I was on so many podcasts that year. Now, I did have a company that I sold in 2022 that was also a peptide-based hair regrowth and facial rejuvenation company that also did very well. I should say modestly well, but I was on, all the big name podcasts. And so I did make a name for myself teaching people how to regrow their hair using peptide-based products and stuff like that. And then fast forward to here, BioLongevity Labs was founded in October of last year. And we launched globally with PR and all that stuff at A4M in Las Vegas in December. And it's just been a zero to hero story. I mean, the right place, right time. I mean, obviously my brand is really associated with peptides. So that really helped it. And then I have my co-founder, Hunter Williams, who also has a very big personal brand on peptides. And so we've just really just exploded. And, everything is just, we've honestly been in the right place at the right time. Obviously, RFK Jr. coming in to the presidency, talking about peptides, talking about alternative forms of medicine, alternative forms of healing. And so we've really just taken advantage of that. And, now here I am, I'm, being asked to speak on the main stage at almost every major biohacking conference and call it health optimization summit out there.
So Jay, tell us what is this status just for the Australians over here and the Americans who are listening and the Brits who may have not taken peptides yet, right? Yes. What is the legal status in America? Can anybody just buy peptides online? So I'll tell you what can happen in Australia. You can buy peptides
and get arrested
in air brackets for therapeutic use. No, it's legal to buy them in Australia. Sorry, for research use, not therapeutic use, for research use, right?
Yes.
Now, When it comes to synthetic hormones, yes, you will have longevity doctors prescribing testosterone and
Sure.
all of these things for people where there's a medical need, but an individual can't purchase
Right.
legally peptides, or a doctor cannot prescribe peptides here unless there is a medical use case. For instance, somebody has stunted growth, they can have some of the growth hormone precursors or growth hormone itself. So what's the status in the United States? And do you know about other countries such as UK and places like that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's really not much difference, Paul. Like my company is a research chemical company. I mean, we sell bioregulators and small molecules that are perfectly legal. They're found on Amazon. They're considered supplements by regulatory associations and committees, even for performance and anti-doping and all that stuff. But it's the same thing. It's just in the United States, there's just the FDA, the medical establishment doesn't really have a purview in the research space. And so
Right.
what's happening is, if as long as you understand how to word, your products and say for research purposes only, and then don't do anything other, beyond that, which I won't mention on this podcast because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but it's totally legal for somebody, whether it's a person or they're doing it for their animal or their lab rat or whatever, to research on themselves. They have that fundamental right.
Yeah.
Obviously, in medicine, from an FDA approval standpoint, if a doctor is gonna write a script on a peptide, they have to do it off label. I mean, if you talk to my attorney, my regulatory attorney for my company, he will literally say to you, the peptide space is as clear as mud.
Okay.
Right?
All
Like
right.
that's kind of where it's at. But research chemical companies have been around for 30 years. The ability, like I said, I was using peptides in 2004. The ability to purchase, again, for research use is very prevalent, and all, worldwide. There are research companies everywhere, and on pretty much every continent. It's just
Yes.
some countries like Australia, some countries in the EU, we don't have to mention them, are very like strident and against the use of these, which is really a joke. I mean, the FDA did classify in the United States in 2023, 27 or 26, I think it was 27 of like the world's most known and used and experienced peptides as class 2, which was a big joke because it was like basically said potentially harmful and not enough information on them. And everybody in the clinical space that was already prescribing peptides was like, this is a joke, because they already know that these things are not harmful. They're organic signaling molecules.
Mm.
The length of the chain depends on whether you have to inject it or take it orally. The longer the chain, the more you have to inject it to cross the blood-brain barrier and get into portal circulation, whereas the shorter the chain can be consumed orally. But I mean, the risk is so minimal. I've never known anybody that's gotten sick or OD'd or hurt themselves from injecting peptides. And I've known people that have overdosed because they don't know what they're doing. It's just the risk is minimal. But again, from a big picture standpoint, peptides are a fundamental threat to the sick care allopathic medical industry, because sick care wants people to have their symptoms treated. They don't want to
Mm.
attack or heal. Like I like to say that peptides are the crypto of healthcare, because
That's an
they're,
interesting
they're
thought.
wholly decentralized, and they treat the fundamental root cause, just as crypto treats the fundamental root cause of usury and fake money. I mean, it's not fake money. I mean, you still don't know. People will be like, well, I don't know where it is, right? I mean, I don't want to make this show about talking about decentralized currency, but the reality is that peptides do treat the fundamental root cause of illness, disease, or dysregulation. And once a person, as I like to say, becomes sovereign, empowered, and free, they can do it themselves without having to rely on a doctor or any person in allopathic medicine to basically gatekeep. And so I teach people how to do this for themselves, where they don't have to rely on a doctor. And honestly, man, like I have a mentor, which I can't tell you. You probably know who this person is because he's very famous. He is a doctor, but he told me in 2014 that if growth hormone agonist peptides, metformin, and what was the other thing? Oh, and testosterone were available over the counter, we wouldn't have hospitals in the world. And he's probably right, because people would be educated on how to do these things to prevent aging, or I shouldn't say prevent because we're all aging, but to slow aging, to regress aging. You know what I mean? To live in a way that is avoiding the sick care medical system.
So if we take a step back, Jay,
Sure.
let's talk about what peptides actually are,
Yeah.
and how they actually function in the body. So let's just assume that somebody has heard of peptides, but doesn't actually know what that means and how they work in the body. Give us the high level overview of that.
So basically, very simply, to make it as simply as I can, peptides are fractionated proteins or biomolecules that are technically found organically in human blood and tissue and lymph and stuff like that, but they are synthesized in a lab when people inject them, right? I mean, you have to make them from something. So, I mean, like almost all drugs or peptides or bioregulators or even supplements, they are synthesized. But again, because they're biomolecules and wholly organic and literally come from mostly from human tissue, they're safe. They're not like allopathic, what I call petroleum distillate medications that when they break down in the biological systems or in the central nervous system or even in the bloodstream, they leave residue. And that residue is what causes the side effects from all these different drugs. And that's why like most people who are in their late 50s and early 60s who are taking 15 to 20 different drugs that they've been prescribed by their doctors, end up having symptoms and side effects from the breakdown of the other drugs. And they're taking drugs to address the side effects of the other drugs. I mean, it's a whole cottage industry and it's a mess, but you're never going to see that with peptides. And so they can be injected, they can be orally consumed, they can be intranasally, snorted or inhaled. They can be transdermally applied to the skin. There's stuff for the hair that you can, use as a serum and rub into your scalp and it will regrow hair follicles or strengthen the follicular root. I mean, there's so many applications for peptides. It's incredible.
And Jay, is there one method of all of those that is the most potent delivery method? I would presume that injecting is the most potent.
Yeah, injections are always the highest impact delivery system for two reasons. They get into portal circulation fastest and they cross the blood-brain barrier at the highest impact. Now, we at my company have delivered a new delivery system that is basically, it's the company that's selling it to us in partnership. They're called Instamed. They have patented this, but there were previous technology similar to theirs. They just didn't have the stabilizing agents that they now have. And that's due to the improvement in technology. But basically, we're selling starting probably July 3rd or July 4th. We will be selling it's basically a strip. I was looking on my desk to see if I had one where I could hold it up and show you too. But basically, it's a strip. We call it bio strips. And you can pull it out of the packaging and place it on your tongue. And it instantly then the tongue will go to the roof of the mouth and it will actually absorb through what is called the mucosal membrane of the cheek and gums. Now, it's a fascinating and very, very effective delivery system. But previously, anything that was buccal / oral would have to go through the digestive tract. So you'd have to still absorb it through here. And then it goes down into the small intestine and through the liver and blah, blah, blah. And all of that, for the most part, almost all oral drugs and peptides that are made that have to go through the digestive tract are broken up or degraded really fast. And so the efficacy is very low. Whereas with this one going into here, it's getting into portal circulation or the bloodstream really quickly. And we're doing stability tests right now. And the company's doing stability tests right now. But like very, very truthfully, I think it's going to be somewhere, Paul, between 65 and 75% as efficacious as an injection. Now, that sounds like to people that inject, they're like, well, why would I ever use that? You won't. But to the 80% of the world who's literally scared shitless to inject a peptide into themselves, they're going to do that because all you have to do is do the math. Just do 2 instead of 1 and you'll get the same effect.
And what's the effectiveness of the nasal delivery mechanism?
Some of the nasals are fine. It really just depends on the size of the molecule of the peptide. Like a lot of the nootropic peptides are intranasal, like Selenk, C-Max, Dihexa. There's a bunch of other ones that most people don't know what they are, but they can be inhaled, splash like an intranasal mist. As far as like their effectiveness compared to an injectable, again, depending on the peptide, I think they can be as high as about 75 to 80%, but most of them it's going to be less, I shouldn't say less, equal to the strip or less. And again, people don't like putting shit up their nose, right? I mean, that's just kind of the truth. I mean, it's like, it's not the most efficient. It's not like, it doesn't feel the best. So I think if it comes down to it, most people will choose the strip in the mouth before they're going to ever choose to inhale or snort up your nose or inject.
Okay. So let's now talk about longevity medicine and regenerative medicine. So what would you say if you were to have to rank all of the things that people can take from a longevity perspective, right? So for females who've gone through menopause, HRT. For men, we're talking about replacement testosterone, plus then all the peptides. Give us maybe go through your top 5 or so that you think are really impactful from a longevity perspective and a biohacking perspective.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, this is a tough question for me because I personally, I mean, it's my opinion, but I mean, from what I know, I mean, I've been on injectable therapeutic testosterone and I've changed my delivery systems for now 25 years. I started in 1999.
And Jay, sorry, a question on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
My understanding is if you so you got low T as a man. If
Yep.
you go on to replacement testosterone,
Yes.
you pretty much have to be on that for the rest of your life because
Correct.
when you're taking the exogenous stuff, your ability to produce it is just suppressed. Now, maybe
Yeah.
you could have a couple of years get off it and get back to some, but this is when you're on the train, you're on the train.
Yeah. 100%. And my answer to that is that once you go on the train, you would never want to go off the train because it's so transformative and life altering. And very honestly, depending on where a person lives, I mean, obviously Aboriginals don't have the same, environmental degradation of the major cities or the major coastal, urban population centers. But dude, if you were in the States, and I don't know when the last time you were here is, but like this place is an absolute cesspool. I mean, we have endocrine disrupting chemicals, plastics, phthalates,
Yes.
estrogenic. I mean, there's so much biochemical disturbance in the environment that almost every man today under the age of 25 has low testosterone. It's a disaster. It has never been worse in the United States. And it's also, causing the same, it causes issues with women. I mean, it hypermasculizes women because the opposite is happening. So it's a really bad situation. So to answer your question and get back to the question, like I still think that from a longevity standpoint, a microdose of therapeutic testosterone as soon as a man has a clinical need, which is so early nowadays. And it's not true, even though it's a myth, that testosterone will make you infertile. You have to use other, FSH, follicle stimulating hormones, and luteinizing hormone adjuncts or medicines or supplements to make sure that you maintain motile sperm. But it's very simple. I mean, I was on therapeutic testosterone for 12 years before I had my 2 daughters. Right. So I never had an issue having kids, and you just have to know what to do. So number one, I always say that before a person looks at peptides or anything down that, call it growth hormone agonist or growth hormone mediated pathway, you should look into hormones first. Because Paul, if you don't have optimized hormones, and the majority of the world does not, in fact, they have a deficiency, using peptides is like literally putting rubber bullets in your gun. You're not going to get the same effect as somebody that has a very powerful endocrine system, immune system, and thyroid function. So hormones first, peptides next. Now, to answer your question, if you're going to talk about longevity peptides, there's a lot to choose from.
Now just before we jump into peptides,
Yep.
Jay, so I will say that here I think hormones and hormone replacement therapies for both men and women is much more prevalent in the longevity space. I know
Thank God.
I know quite a few doctors who will
Yeah.
test and prescribe testosterone creams or injections for people who are low.
Yeah.
And I also know some blokes who tend to be older who are on replacement testosterone and have gone, holy fuck, what a game changer.
Yeah, it
right?
is a game changer. It is a total game changer.
The pull-out, Jay, that I want to highlight to people is that you mentioning the impact on fertility. So if you're younger and still wanting to be fertile, there's other steps that you have to take. What I'm hearing from you.
Exactly.
Okay,
And,
cool.
and again, it totally comes down to what is your purpose, right? Like most men who are purposeless and have no vision or drive or anything, it's because they lack the masculine essence, and that is directly responsible and comes from therapeutic testosterone, or I should say a pulse of testosterone. But so many people don't have it. And again, it's not their fault. They literally are born into an environment that is degraded so bad. I mean, look, this is statistical fact. This is in all my books. The men of the 30s and 40s and 50s had 3 times the level of free testosterone that men walking around the streets today do. 3 times.
Get away.
In fact, dude, there are multiple studies demonstrating this. 7 continental, there's one called the Hebrew University study, and they did a patient cohort population from 1971 to 1996. You can Google this. On all 7 continents, there was like 45,000 men, and it showed that sperm is 1/3 and hormone levels, free circulating levels of free testosterone, which by the way is the only thing that matters. Total testosterone is a meaningless number. 95% of doctors don't even understand that. They don't even understand the difference between free and total testosterone. Total testosterone is bound testosterone in the human body. It is completely unusable. Free testosterone is bioactive and bioavailable, and it is the amount that is readily available to the body, male or female, at any point in time in the day. So measuring your total testosterone is a meaningless thing because who cares? You have to measure your free testosterone. I literally will guarantee you, Paul, that 90% of the practicing doctors in Australia don't even know that. 90%.
Interesting.
90%. Do you realize that the majority of doctors in this world right now who understand how to do this, do you know where they got their information from?
What's that? Your book?
Me. 100%. From both of my books. I mean, that's been told to me thousands of times. I mean, I have so many physicians, younger physicians, thank God, who are really making a change and making a difference, have learned how to do this. I mean, obviously my books are very, very clinically written and have thousands of studies. So they're very scientifically based. But to get back to your question about, anti-aging peptides, there's a lot of really good ones. You always have to start first with a growth hormone agonist peptide, right? There's 3 primary ones, and that's tesamorelin, ipamorelin, and then CJC 1295. And you can actually use those peptides in a blend. CJC and IPA are great. IPA and TESA are great. It really depends, when people ask me, well, which one should I choose? It really depends on what your primary goal is. Most men are fat. They have too much belly fat. Clearly you're not. Clearly I'm not. But if you have belly fat, tesamorelin and ipamorelin are great because they're going to reduce the visceral fat body or the adiposity of fat in the center mass better than anything else. So always first focus on what is a growth hormone agonist peptide, because as you know, dude, as we get older, growth hormone pulse is lower. Our pancreas, our insulin is oversecreted, and, we just stop producing natural IGF-1 production. So you want to really look at improving IGF-1 production as you age.
So 2 questions on that, Jay.
Yep.
What about sermorelin? Is that in the same bucket as ipamorelin and tesamorelin and the CJC?
On paper it is, but it's not in practice. And so many doctors use sermorelin because there's a lot of scientific studies on it. But honestly, in experiencing using between those 3 and Serma, I wouldn't even, this is how inefficient and ineffective sermorelin is. It's not in my book. I did not put it in my book. It's not good enough. It does not hold up against those other 3 GH agonist peptides. And look, man, if we're going to talk about growth hormone agonist peptides, we have to talk about growth hormone.
Yes, and sorry, Jay, before you dive into growth hormone, just clarify for people what a growth hormone antagonist is. So my understanding is it's up the chain and it stimulates the release of growth hormone, so it's a precursor.
Exactly. You have 2 forms. You have a GHRH, which is growth hormone releasing peptide or hormone, and then you have GnRN, and that's growth hormone. Shit, now I just lost the my brain just melted down. But anyway, you have those two formats, and both of them, if you use them together, and that's why they stack IPA and CJC together, or IPA and TESA together, you get the best of both worlds. Now, ipamorelin, just to speak about ipamorelin, doesn't increase cortisol or prolactin. So that's the one peptide, the growth hormone agonist peptide, that in isolation is probably best used by both men and women because there's no side effects. It's not going to disturb your body's natural pituitary function. And again, over time, you can pulse it like 2 or 3 times a day at like 200 to 300 micrograms, and it will give you a pulse like it was natural human growth hormone. And speaking of human growth hormone, there's a lot of information online about growth hormone that is bunk. When I look at growth hormone and I look at the science, because a lot of people in the medical literature or the medical community will say, oh, it can cause cancer. Raising IGF too high is bad, blah, blah, blah. It does bad things to NAD at the cell. It can cause mitochondria. I mean, I've heard it all, dude. And when I hear that, I laugh, because if you look at the research on growth hormone, the research is in dwarfism. So it's in young men and women who have epiphyseal plate growth issues that close too early. And so what they do to these kids so that they're not 3'5" and 4' dwarves is they give them massive amounts of human growth hormone, when they're young, to get them to go through the premature closing of the epiphyseal plate so that they grow through it. And dude, they give these kids, like, I always have this when I'm on podcast, they give these kids a full pen of Pfizer genotropin growth hormone, and they don't have side effects. The side effects that these people show, and again, this is all in the demonstrated in the clinical research, is from acromegaly, which is when the bones overgrow, right? So they get like a jarhead, military looking, square jawline, protruded, head or whatever. But again, if you ask a dwarf, would you rather be 3'6" or 4 tall versus having, a pronounced, military looking face? I mean, they're all going to say, I'd prefer to be tall, and, people don't look at me strange. But at the end of the day, they don't have side effects. They don't have cancer. They don't have any of that stuff. So it's mostly BS. And then I also look to the bodybuilding world, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the bodybuilding world and bodybuilders who are over egging the pudding, shall we say, because you and I will both have seen these bodybuilders who have got so much muscle on them,
right,
and they're completely ripped, but their stomach massively protrudes. And the reason is that it their organs grow as well if they're taking super physiologic levels, right?
So yes and no. The organs are not growing, the organs are swelling. So that will subside when they come down. But yes, the question is yes. And but again, in that culture, they are taking massive amounts of everything. It's polypharmacy, and you're not seeing those guys die of cancer either. So what I'm saying is that the concern about growth hormone, and I'll caveat everything in a second, is absolutely overblown. Here's what most people don't know about, Paul. And unfortunately, I don't hear enough doctors talking about this, and it blows my mind. IGF-1 naturally declines as we get older. Let's just say that by 45, and again, IGF-1 is interstitial growth fluid, which is obviously, as you know, which is the actual fluid that's produced by the pituitary that increases natural growth hormone production, or what is called endogenous growth hormone. And as we get older, it just stops. And the fatter, more inflamed, more insulin resistant you are, the less you're going to be producing at all. People like me and you, we probably have a little bit, because we're leaner, we're less inflamed, we have low insulin resistance, so our body is probably functioning a little bit better. But in your 50s, let's say start at 45, and then by your 50s, no matter what your health is, you don't have much growth hormone. So if you're going to take a peptide, and this is where people get confused, what do peptides do? They stimulate the pituitary to release more endogenous growth hormone. But if you don't have any endogenous growth hormone and you take a peptide, how is the peptide going to actually increase growth hormone? It's not. Now, people will debate me and argue and say, that's not true. There's this study and that study. Yeah, maybe a peptide will help a little bit somebody who's not producing as much, but it's sure not going to compete with growth hormone in a clinically precise dose for somebody in their 50s and 60s and 70s. So I always tell people, like, look, man, if you can afford it, and as you know this, dude, previously before COVID, growth hormone was not affordable. It cost $4,000 or $5,000 a month of American dollars to just do like a micro dose of growth hormone. Yes. And so it was like only very elite, very wealthy people. But just so you know, dude, the elites and wealthy have been using growth hormone for 50 years. I mean, this is what they use. And, I know this things, right? Like I work with a lot of these people, but at the end of the day, you can now get growth hormone in a pen, again, that Pfizer pen that I just showed you, which is by far the best growth hormone in the world, genotropin, for $4,000 for a year, for an entire year.
Right.
So, and that's taking like 1.5 to 2 IUs a day for a man, or maybe 1 IUs for a woman. And that's, for most people, that's affordable, especially considering that it used to be, and by the way, I should say this, in the United States right now, if you had a script for tesamorelin, which is called a Grifta, which again is still in the HIV community, it's $5,200. And that's with the script through insurance.
So tesamorelin on a script is more expensive than
growth hormone from an offshore pharmacy anywhere.
100%. And just to clarify, excuse me, Jay, and excuse me, listeners, I've got a hoarse throat at the minute, but that amount that you were talking about, the 1.5 to 2 IUs per day, that is physiologic levels, right?
Exactly.
So, and it's making the distinction, I think, for people between the physiologic levels and then the supraphysiologic levels that a lot of bodybuilders will take, whether it's growth hormone or testosterone or all of the stacks of anabolic steroids that give these guys heart disease if they're over-egging it, right?
100% nailed it. And look, that's what I'm about, right? Like, I teach people how to use clinically precise dosages to either slightly boost or replicate what they lost due to age. Right. So when you do it this way, you can transform your life. You can massively slow and regress aging. You can lower your biological age. You can completely reduce inflammatory markers. I mean, there's so many things that you can do. I mean, when people say that, and you already kind of said it, what are the best drugs for longevity? I mean, there's really four. The four primary paths for longevity is endocrine system optimization, thyroid optimization, pancreas optimization, right? Because the pancreas, I mean, we die due to the level of inflammation on our bodies, right? Because inflammation is what leads to cellular degradation. Cellular degradation creates dis-ease of whatever form it is. So when people ask me, like, what's the number one way I can live the longest? I always say, be lean. Statistically proven, the leaner you are, the longer you will live, assuming you don't get in a plane crash or hit by a car. You know what I'm saying? So, like, the leaner you are, the longer you will live. So, like, how do I become lean and how do I maximize my longevity? By keeping your body fat as a man between 10 and 15%, and as a woman, somewhere between 22 and 17%. Some women can probably function around 15 or 16, but that's super elite. Women always have more body fat for evolutionary biological purposes because of, obviously, they're maternal. They raise children. They have to have that internal fat. You can't even measure it, but it's always there. But that's what you do. You keep your body fat between 12 and 15% year round as a man. And as a woman, you're somewhere between, like I said, 17 and 22. And statistically, you will live longer than anyone. And again, going back to the pathways that you got to support and optimize as you age, the endocrine system, and you can obviously do that through either natural means or therapeutic testosterone. The pituitary, again, through growth hormone agonist peptides or growth hormone. And again, at my age, I'm 54. I prefer a microdose of growth hormone Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday. That's what I do. I definitely use, obviously, all sorts of peptides, mitochondrial peptides, which we can talk about at some point because I love talking about those. But I use that. And then for my thyroid, I use desiccated, which is porcine thyroid, because desiccated thyroid is T1, T2, T3, and T4, which is all 4 active thyroid hormones. Now, in the medical literature, they like to give people T3 and T4, which are the 2 drugs, or Cytomel or Synthroid. Those are really bad drugs because they don't treat the downstream thyroid hormones, T1 and T2. And once you, like anything, when you're only treating a portion and not all of it, you're going to end up having a lagging indicator, or just basically some part of it that declines. So all these men and women that are on T3 and T4 from these, again, medications, Synthroid or Cytomel, they usually end up with a damaged thyroid. Desiccated thyroid does not disturb, in most people, natural thyroid. So you can take a small dose along with your therapeutic testosterone or your therapeutic hormones. If you're a woman, you might be on estradiol and progesterone as well. And that will bump your temperature and your basal metabolic rate just slightly to keep up with the testosterone. Now, the last thing to address outside of growth hormone, thyroid, and testosterone is insulin sensitivity. And by far, the best drug in the world and always will be. And this will be proven statistically and scientifically within the next 2 years when the TAME trial ends, is metformin. Now, metformin is also maligned because it's a type 2 diabetics drug. And
Yes.
the medical industry / establishment, the medical mafia, let's call them that, they teach doctors in 101 level classes that it causes lactic acidosis and kidney issues, which is the biggest hunk of bullshit in the history of the world. I've written an article, it's so old now, I laugh. It's from 2019. It's 10,000 words. It's published in Harvard. It's published on EDU. It basically goes through all of the benefits of metformin and all of the negatives, the so-called negatives of metformin and what it can do and what it might do. And like I said, it's 10,000 word article, and there's no one on this planet, even to this day, that has been able to come to me and disprove that it's not a beneficial drug. Now, remember, it's not really a drug. It's a plant that grows wild in the fields of France. I forget what it's. It's like the French lilac officinalis or something. And again, Big Pharma patented it and made it into a drug, but it's absolutely a plant. And what it does, Paul, better than anything else, including berberine, including ALA, including all these other different glucose disposal agents, is it increases Akkermansia mucilus, which is the helpful, beneficial microbes that grow in the stomach and in the microbiome that prevent dysbiosis. It prevents candida. It prevents, again, anything that can inflame the microbiome or the gut. And so if you have healthy levels of that, you're pretty much impervious to everything. In fact, dude, there's like now 50 studies on PubMed that show that people that were using metformin during COVID never got sick.
It's interesting. I didn't know that metformin had an impact on the gut microbiome. For a little bit of context for our listeners,
Sure.
and you can jump in and add depth to this story. So metformin caused big waves in the longevity space a number of years ago when there was that study, which I'm sure you're familiar with, that showed that
mitochondrial dysfunction.
Well, no, the diabetics I'm talking who were on metformin
live longer than people
outlived it. Right. And then there was a second study that came out that kind of negated those findings. And there was some criticism of the first study because some people who had pre-existing conditions, they were ruled out of it. But anyway, there's a big TAME trial going on. So talk about the TAME trial. But then I have seen some other studies around other benefits of metformin, right?
Yep.
And then I'd like you to ask the question or answer the question about, from your perspective, does taking metformin inhibit some of the benefits of exercise if you are exercising when currently taking metformin, right? I think if you can't exercise, metformin is a no-brainer, but clarify that question and tell us about the TAME study.
So the answer, so let me go from the beginning. So Neil Berzalai is a friend of mine because he knows I'm a huge metformin supporter, and he's obviously read my article and my thesis and all that stuff. And so he's been kind of letting me know that I'm going to be validated at some point very soon. So when the information comes out about the TAME trial, the world is going to know that everything, all the people, and there's obviously, it's not just me and smart people. There's a lot of people that know that metformin is amazing, but metformin will be validated. Now, to your question about does it limit mTOR signaling, which could functionally limit power output? It does. But here's the thing. And, I've had debates with some really very smart people, Stan Efferding, shout out to the Rhino. He's like one of the world's smartest power lifters and strongmen. And he's a really smart guy, a scientist. And him and I have openly debated this in public forums and at symposiums and stuff like that. But basically I got him to say that, because he was against metformin for a long time. But then once he really started looking into the research, he was like, wow, he's like, I guess that my guys, meaning his strength athletes, and these are world-class power lifters, should come off of metformin 10 days before a meet. Now, why is he saying that? Because metformin is so powerful at the cellular level in regulating NAD+, in regulating mitochondrial output, that it does suppress mTOR signaling so much that it can reduce force output. So if you're and again, think about this for a second. If you're a world-class strongman and you need to generate maximum torque and force production in your lift, then yes, you should not be on metformin about 10 days, somewhere between 10 and 14 days before your meet, because it's very transient in the cell that it does this. And again, metformin does so many, and this is where Stan comes in and agrees with me. It does so many other amazing things for cellular health and for life extension that he believes that everybody should be on it. Now, remember, world-class power athletes or strength men are fat guys. You know, they're inflamed. They have high A1C levels. I mean, if you've ever been to a power, you know, what do you call it? Like a world-class powerlifting event or a strongman competition, these dudes are fat. Like they're strong as hell, but they are not healthy. I mean, these are guys, I mean, when you see them finish their moves, they're over on the side and they're like, you're looking at them like, oh shit, this guy's going to code. Right? Because they're just not in good health. So Stan has admitted that he thinks that it's a great product to take for very, very strong people who are not in the best of heart health and not in the best metabolic health because they eat too much to be, again, they're world-class strength athletes. But as far as people, because this is also a myth that's out there, it suppresses testosterone or it suppresses endocrine function. Anything that it's ever done in anyone at any study level was transient. So it's not going to, like, if you take 500 milligrams AM and PM, or if you're a woman and you take 250 and 250, it's not going to suppress your natural testosterone function or output any more than just a tiny bit within probably the hour of you taking it. So, and I always say this, like, and obviously, you know, my opinion on hormone optimization. If you're hormonally optimized, it makes no difference or benefit at all. If you're not, it could affect you from having, like, if you're a 350 free testosterone level, it could lower you to 325 before you train, or in that transient window that you took it in that hour after you took it. But is that really going to have a beneficial or negative effect to you overall in your life and your training or in your force production? No, it's not. And so, and again, I know thousands of people who are not hormonally optimized who use metformin, and they've all told me, most of them, that initially, and this is something too that we should talk about, like, if you have an inflamed microbiome and you start taking metformin, you're not going to get sick, but you're going to feel like shit. Like, you're going to feel nauseous and queasy because it's literally upregulating the good, healthy intestinal fauna and microbes to kill whatever shit you got growing in your stomach. And again, dude, most people today have stuff their stomach is inflamed, their gut is inflamed. So, like, you're going to see a 6 to 7, maybe even 8 to 9 day window where you're going to have that stuff killed off, and metformin is going to do an amazing job of doing that. So you kind of have to just, like I always say, you got to, like, gut, you know, literally and figuratively gut your way through it. And then once it kills everything in your microbiome, you'll be fine. And so, like I said, I mean, I've been on metformin since 2002. So I've been on it now for 22, 23 years. Now, I've experimented with dihydroberberine and come off of it completely. I'm also now using a microdose of Jardiance, because Jardiance is, you know, an SGL2 inhibitor, and it's an amazing longevity drug. It increases HDL. It does a lot of amazing things. But I will always use metformin, again, just because I want to be protected in my microbiome from all of the goddamn toxic exposure we have globally. And then you never know when they're going to hit us with their next bioweapon. You know what I mean?
So let's so we talked about metformin. You've talked about, so if we just recap a little bit, so your advice around longevity is optimize your hormones first, and then potentially we're into peptides / stuff like metformin to manage your insulin levels. You then talked about the mitochondria, and I do want to, before we finish, jump into the mitochondria, because for me, that's where a lot of health starts or stops, 100%. Is at the mitochondria.
Starts there.
So give us the lowdown on mitochondrial optimization, and not just from a exogenous chemicals or peptides perspective, but like, let's talk about exercise. Let's talk about red light therapy, if that's something that you're into.
Oh, yeah, so, of course. I have a trifecta Pro 450 bed in my dude, I have everything, man. I have a
And
blessed life.
presumably, Jay, that is producing both red light and
And
near
near
infrared
infrared, of
light.
course.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
give our listeners maybe the 2-minute overview on light therapy, because if people haven't heard this, it's going to
Yeah.
spin them out. Like
Yeah.
I
No,
think this
for sure.
shit is.
I'm actually going to grab a book that I want to. Of course, I usually have it right here, access to me, and now I can't find it. But it's from Dr. Carl Rothschild. And people hear the name Rothschild. Here's Ari Whitten's book. This is actually old, but there was a new book, a new red light book that came out last year. This is like the first, scientifically good book.
Yeah.
And this is from Ari. Ari's a good friend, whatever. But the newest book, which is, I think it's called Subliminal Healing, and it's again by Dr. Carl Rothschild. And you can fact check me. That's probably not the title, but it's something like that. But he basically has all the newest studies. Now, here's when I'm going to throw you for a loop. Most red light technology is worthless because it's Chinese grade and it doesn't have a medical grade signature, and it's not producing an energy signature, whether it's near infrared or red light, that's deep, that's strong enough to get into the cells. And that's the problem, is the majority of red light technology on this planet is absolute garbage. And
so you're talking about the power output, the wattage that it's producing, the watts per whatever. I can't remember what
it's the energy
mechanism.
signature. It's 100% the energy signature. And sadly, the Chinese, everybody that was first getting into the red light foray, I mean, this, it's a cottage industry now. Everybody sells something red light. But majority of the technology is worthless. And that's why if you buy Dr. Carl Rothschild's book, and again, I apologize, I don't know where it is. I can't find it. I usually have it right next to me to talk about this. It talks about the signature necessary for both to really feel it. And true story, when I was using Juve, because I was a spokesperson or an influencer or whatever, where they called me a spokesperson model or whatever for them for a long time. We had the $11,000 device and we stood in front of it. And I would say to my wife, do you think it's doing anything? And she's like, yeah, I mean, other than us taking pictures and putting them on social media, I don't remember. When I got this device 2 years ago, the first session, I was like, holy shit, this is what people are talking about. Now, again, my device costs $80,000. The average person, the best devices cost $160. I have the highest quality of the best tech from an energy signature standpoint at the cheapest price in the marketplace. So again, it's another scam because a lot of people are buying these $500, $300, whatever they get, devices, and they're getting nothing. They're getting absolutely nothing. When you lay in a red light medical grade signature near infrared and red light device, you absolutely get cellularly upregulated. Your mitochondria are turned on. You get better skin quality. You get better energy. I mean, again, you know what the mitochondria are responsible for, but most people are not getting it. They're not getting it because they're not getting the right energy signature. Now, again, I'm not going to sit out here and disparage companies. There's probably a ton of companies now that are putting out the right energy signature, and they probably are under $1,000. And I don't know, but if you really want to feel a medical grade red light signature, you got to get in one of these high end beds, and you need to lay in it for 12 to 15 minutes just to feel it, because most people never feel that.
And let's talk about the mechanisms. So when there is a good quality, right? Mm-hmm. The red light itself will have a big impact on the skin and wound healing, burns. Like everything. There's so much. I wrote a chapter in this in my book. Like the impact on, and I actually have used it. I had open heart surgery, and the healing of my scar.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Really quick.
It does everything.
And then the near infrared penetrates deeper into the body, activates the mitochondria, particularly cytochrome C oxidase in the electron transport chain. Talk to people about why red light and other things to support the mitochondria, why this is really important for our overall health.
It's massive. And I'll just add the other thing. So this is a new technology that I just got in my house. I should have had it in my house in February. I was supposed to come back from Kiwiville and Australia with this thing in my house, and it was just delayed. But besides medical grade red light and near infrared light, Uh, ozone and oxygen perfused into the tissue is amazing, like absolutely amazing. So I have this device. It's in my master bathroom. My wife and I literally, Paul, remodeled our bathroom just to get this device in there. It's called the Bimini Nanojet, and it is a giant tub that functions as a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. And so this tub will go down to freezing, so you can do cold plunges, or will goes up to 105, so you can do like a jacuzzi, steaming hot. My wife and I just keep it at like 101 to 103 year round and just get in there, bro. I get in I'm not joking. When I'm home, I get in that thing at least twice a day and sometimes 3 times a day. Now I only use my red light device probably like once every other day. Sometimes I get in it weekly. But if you use red light and then jump in that and perfuse your tissues with oxygen and ozone, bro, that's the ultimate biohack. I mean, I feel like I'm getting younger. I'm performing better in the gym. My strength training, I'm getting stronger. I'm getting more muscular. I'm getting leaner. That is the ultimate 1-2 combo, is medical grade and near infrared red light, and then ozone and oxygen perfused into the tissues. And so what that is it's just a giant jacuzzi tub above ground, and you just get in it and you hit oxygen sensor on it. It's, all push button, and it just starts perfusing ozone and oxygen into the water. And so you can, if you want to go under, I don't ever go under. I just lay down and I breathe in and do breathing exercises and getting in, and it's insane. It's insane.
So I'll get into in a second that mechanism of why that's additive. What about methylene blue with red light therapy?
Stay away from methylene blue, bro. It is real bad.
Tell us what.
Bad news. Because it's doing things, you talked about cytochrome C, it's doing a lot of things that are negative. It has short-term benefits, but long-term, I would stay away from methylene blue. It's not good. Most of the studies on methylene blue doing beneficial things are flawed. And just so you know, I was using methylene blue in 2017. And thankfully, my wife and I were literally like getting the blue tongue, and we'd be looking at each other like, does it do anything for you? And she was like, no. Does it do anything for you? No. And this is my pet theory. I don't think anyone who has optimized hormones feels the benefit of methylene blue. People without optimized hormones feel the dopamine signaling effect, but you don't feel that if you have hormones, if you're optimized hormones, because you already have incredibly enhanced dopamine signaling. But there's a lot of stuff that's coming out about methylene blue right now that is not good. It's also doing things. It's also doing things in your body. That chemical array that is being released in your body can cause, let's just call it free oxyradical buildup and produce, I would actually say, enhanced senescent cell formation. I wouldn't touch methylene blue. I would stay away from methylene blue. And I know it's all the rage right now, and people are talking about methylene blue. And I do know there is some enhanced dopamine signaling, and people feel a cognitive boost from it, but I would stay away from it. I've never been a proponent of it. And now that I started seeing some new stuff on it, I'm like, oh, now I know why. But I don't like it. But medical grade red light and near infrared light, and then whether you use a hyperbaric chamber or you get one of the technologies that I have, they even sell a portable device. So you can put the portable device in your tub, and it's just as effective as having the nice one. And by the way, the one that I have is 30 grand.
Okay. So, and the purpose of that, is that enhancing oxygen delivery to the mitochondria, or is 100%. There a separate, right?
No, 100%. Okay. So basically it's like a double zap, right? Like if you go, I've learned the hard way. If you do that first and then get into the red light bed, you literally are sitting in the red light bed, and you get out of the red light bed, and your red light bed is an ocean, because it's just turned on your mitochondria from all this, the perfusion in the mitochondria. And now the red light's activating it. So you're just like sitting there, and you get out of the red light bed in 12 minutes and you're soaked. Like your body, you talk about like a furnace, a metabolic furnace. It's like boom. But if you do the opposite, and you do the red light first, and then you get into the perfusion, and then you go train, you just are an animal. You have I would actually, this is my opinion, and I have no way to verify this, but I think you have about a 10 to 12% performance enhancement. It's insane, which for guys like us is a lot, right? Like that's 3 or 4 more reps. That's better recovery. You can shorten your rest intervals. It's noticeable. much more noticeable. And I track everything. So like, I know when I'm like, whoa, but like I said, dude, I literally get in that thing. I'm addicted to it. I get in that thing twice a day, usually 15 to 20 minutes. I take my phone, I take my books, I'll read, somebody's got to invent something where I could put like a book as I'm laying underneath it. So I could just turn the pages, because I hate holding onto my phone, dude. Fuck these screens, man.
So Jay, just to summarize everything, because we've been through a shit lot of stuff today,
glad,
right?
Man. You got me going.
So from a biohacking perspective, if you were to design and look, I know the caveat here is that it is going to be different for different people, but just let's say you got somebody in their middle age who just isn't feeling great and wants, what's the best biohacking stack for me?
Yeah.
What would you be saying from a generic perspective?
For sure. First order of business is get your labs done, get blood work done, understand if you have a hormone deficiency, because obviously, as much as I support therapeutic hormones, if you're anally retentive and, super diligent, I think you could probably optimize, not as well as with hormones, but get close by just changing your lifestyle, living insulin controlled, start exercising. People say, what does that mean, Jay, when you say live insulin controlled? It means regulate your carbohydrate consumption. The great Charles Poliquin said, you get your carbs when you deserve them. Right. So it's like,
and that, Jay, on that, sorry, I think we should rename diabetes as carbohydrate intolerance. Right.
Exactly.
That would be a game changer. And now, very good point. I'm glad you started with that. Get your fundamentals right. There's no point in going and doing all this stuff if you're eating a shit diet and not exercising and your sleep's crap. Right. So sort your fundamentals out first, then hormones.
Insulin controlled living is number one. Once you're insulin controlled living and you can see clearly and you can think clearly, then it's obviously like, what does your exercise routine look like? Are you doing resistance training? Are you doing some form of cardiovascular training? You should always do both. I have all these guys who say, I don't need to do cardio. My rest intervals are short in my lifting. And I laugh in their face. I say, bro, you don't even understand the purpose of cardio. The purpose of cardio is to prevent vascular defect and illness and dysregulation as you get older, and lifting weights is not going to strengthen the vascular network like cardio is. So it's crazy that these guys think that by lowering their rest intervals they're going to get cardiovascular benefit. But so obviously live insulin first, get lab work, understand if you have a hormone deficiency, start living insulin controlled. You can do that at the same time. Be on the foundations, getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, hopefully, deep restful sleep, have good sleep hygiene, black out your room, have no technology, turn off your Wi-Fi, blah, blah, blah. Again, combination of resistance training and obviously cardiovascular training. And then if you have a hormone deficiency, investigate using therapeutic hormones. If you're too afraid or too cheap to do that, then, change your lifestyle. Change your clothing that you wear, stop wearing polyester, stop wearing, non-breathable clothing that prevents hormones and does all these other things. I mean, again, there's so many, the list is endless. But again, the biggest tool in the tool belt for sure is optimizing your hormones with therapeutic testosterone. And if you're a woman, you might need, estradiol and progesterone too. And sometimes men need both of those as well as they get older. So make sure you're obviously working, hopefully, depending on where you live, with a physician who understands how to hormonally optimize you. Do not work with a general practitioner or a family doctor because they're clueless. And then from there, my peptide stack of choice would be, again, a growth hormone agonist peptide, either Tessa, IPA, or CJC. Mitochondrial peptide. My favorite is SS31, which is an amplifier peptide. So anything else that you take, if you use SS31, you can lower the dose of, because it literally will amplify the cellular cascades and the cellular signaling. So again, it's a mitochondrial peptide by trade, but it does so many amazing things. And all you need is a microdose of that peptide. So you can take like 250 to 500 micrograms every other day and get awesome benefit from that. From that, if you want a nootropic, you would take C-Max, Dihexa are my two favorite. We at my company at BioLongevity Labs, we make a nootropic oral product right now that is by far the number one nootropic in the world. It's called BioMind, and it has three different, two small molecules, one peptide. It has Dihexa. It has a new product that nobody even knows about yet called J147, and it's actually a stage 2 Alzheimer's drug for neurodegenerative disease, and it's amazing. I mean, you should see what they're getting back on people that are in the stage trials on it. So we actually have that in our formulation. And then we also have NuPept, which you're probably familiar is a really powerful racetam. But that peptide stack / small molecule stack is without a doubt the number one in the world. We have tons of A-list people and famous athletes are already using it right now, but that's what I would use 100%. And again, it's just an oral capsule. So you can take 2 in the morning and it's amazing. Let me think, what else would I do? If you're
red light therapy.
Yeah. I mean, if you're injured, I was going to get to that in a second, but if you're injured, you want to always have BPC or TB500. Yeah. Cardilax is also a new injectable bioregulator that is actually helping to reboot cartilage. So, that's kind of in the holy grail is like cartilage regeneration is very difficult to get by. A lot of people will say, you can use PRP or stem cells or exosomes in a compressed spine, but you really can't. But Cardilax, we've seen people use that, and it is helping to regenerate nerve fiber bundles around damaged bone on bone spine. So that's one to look at. And then, outside of peptides or supplements, for sure, medical grade red light, 3 or 4 days a week. I mean, if you're acutely injured, you already said it, and you have autoimmune disease or you have, a horrible disease, you could get in that thing for 20 minutes a day, every single day. I mean, it helps against everything. I know people that have, epilepsy that use it, people that have MS, multiple sclerosis, it helps with that. So it does so many amazing things. But I mean, again, it's obviously relative to your level of acute injury. And then, perfusion with oxygen and ozone. Now, there are other products out in the marketplace, Paul. There's the HOCAT, but that thing's like 85 or 90,000. Clinics have that. And then HBOTs. And a real HBOT is $100K.
So, Jay, just for the people who don't understand that, hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Correct.
Right? So it's like this capsule that you get in, and it delivers.
Dude, honestly, the 2 smartest guys in the world with HBOT, and they're very good personal friends of mine, Dr. Scott Shear and Dr. What is his name? Jason Saunders. The 2 leading guys. They both told me because I've had
Jason Saunders on my podcast before.
Jason's awesome, dude. I love Jason. So anyway, those guys are geniuses, and I've known them forever. And I talked to both of them in November and December because that's what we were thinking about this year. We were thinking about getting one of those because they have them in China right now, dude. They have the medical grade steel ones in China, and they'll ship them to you for like $50K. And so I was thinking about putting a room out in my back where my backyard is and just putting it out there and having, a contractor build a room for it. And we could do it. Cause my wife, when she had surgery, used it to heal, and it was amazing. And they do work, that they're amazing. But dude, both of those guys told me, do not under any circumstance put one of those in your house. And I was like, why? He's like, cause they blow up.
Oh, Jesus.
When they depressurize, they blow up. And dude, I shit you not, like 2 months after that, Jason sent me a link to a place in Oakland, Michigan, which is like a really wealthy suburb outside of Detroit. And sure enough, a mom and her 12-year-old son and the nurse practitioner, the mom, the 12-year-old was in it when it blew up and he was gone. Jesus. And the mom was killed after going to the hospital, and the nurse practitioner lost both of her arms and she survived. So dude, I'm not joking. And I'm not trying to put fear into people's, minds, but I mean, you're dealing with a very high end medical grade device that, is pressurized. So I don't think you want to be anywhere close. Well, you can get this $30,000 tub and leave it on at all time and just get in it twice a day. And if you're sick or injured, you could get it in 5. You can sit in it for 2 hours a day. It'll heal you. Dude, the first session, I already told you about the red light. The first session of that, I was like, I feel my airways expanding. And obviously I'm a highly conditioned athlete with super low body fat. And I just felt it like the first day. I was like, this is insane. And now I've had it in my house for 2 months and I'm completely addicted to it. I mean, I think it's the future. You'll probably eventually see a lot of people supporting it. They've got a bunch of pro athletes with it, but they don't have a lot of influencers promoting it yet. But I think it's the next big thing because, again, it's 1/3 the cost of a hyperbaric chamber.
And it's a benanine.
It's called Bimini. It's B. I'll send you a link, but it's BIMNI, Bimini, which is the fountain of youth in Spanish. And it's basically, I think it's Bimini. Hold on. Let me just, before I give you and butcher
we'll get the link, Jay. That's all good. We'll get the link.
I'm sorry. It's BiminiHydrotherapy.com. BiminiHydrotherapy.com. But they've got multiple forms now. They've got like a miniature one that's like $6,000. You can put it in your tub. And then the high end Rolls Royce one that I have is like $30K. But it's worth it. I think it's better than my red light tech.
Jay, this has been an absolute tour de force through hormones, peptides, oxygen, red lights. It's just, Jesus, you name it. So, Jay, where can people go to find out more about you and the stuff that you do, and also about BioLongevity Labs?
For sure, man. And honestly, thank you, man. I love when people are really smart and ask me, because I'm one of those guys, like, if you ask me really smart questions, I'll give you really cool answers. But like, if you just sit there and be like, boo, boo, I don't have anything to say. So you are awesome, man. I commend you, give you mad respect and props. So people can find me on social media at jcampbell333. I'm more active on X or whatever the hell, at Twitter. Probably heavily shadow banned on Instagram and YouTube and those places. And of course, LinkedIn too. And then my website is jcampbell.com. And I do have a domain for anybody who watches me on a podcast to download all my books. Because again, I'm a service to others person. I give away all my products for free. I don't care. It's jcampbell.com/free books. And so they can go there and they can download a free PDF copy of all the books that I have. And there's some really amazing books there, both of the hormone books, the fasting books, and then my peptide book is there too.
Jay, this has been awesome. Thank you. You've been very generous for your time. I know you've got to go and meet your wife, but that's been awesome. We will put the links in the show notes for everybody. And just keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, brother. Let me know how I can help you. I really appreciate it. I'm very grateful. This was an awesome show. You have an amazing day. Okay.
Thanks, bud.